God bless you. I love you with all of my heart. And I want you to know that God's way is the best way. And I want you to know too, whoever tends to the fig tree shall eat the fruit thereof. If we'll do it God's way, we will be so blessed. This is the most unusual message, and I'll tell you why. This very day, while I'm taping this, is the 94th anniversary to the day of my parents' marriage. A young fellow from Scotland and a young girl from Armagh, County Armagh, Northern Ireland, went into St. Anne's Cathedral, downtown Belfast, and were joined in holy matrimony. And I want to tell you a little bit about them, but particularly 3 or 4 or 5 of the lessons that I learned from my parents, whom, you know the word we use, I adored. They were incredible people. And I believe these lessons will be a blessing to you. Let me tell you first a little bit about my daddy. 6 foot 1.5 when he passed away, white-haired. The embodiment, the epitome of honor and integrity. But when he was a little boy of only 4, he lost his daddy, and the daddy was only 28, in Alexandria, close to Balloch, where the waters of the Loch Lomond, famous Loch Lomond Lake, sweep in Scotland. That's where he was born. And now he's no daddy, and he's only 4. After a while, his mother, who was my Granny Craig, she came to Ireland and brought him, of course, and there she remarried. And I don't want to talk too much about this, but let's just say it was such a tragedy because she married a drunk. And then she took off with her new husband and spent a year in America. And my daddy was left as a little boy in with the drunks, a drunken family. And he told me, he said he used to go down into the stable and get on the back of the old donkey, Jenny they called it, and lean forward, whisper into its ear, and tell the old donkey all of his problems. But he was a tremendous man, as it turned out, but those were difficult days. My mother was real difficult too in her early years, in that she lost her mother when she was only 9. And the story of the mother is remarkable because the mother had been raised Roman Catholic. But 3 men came by in a mission and won her to the Lord, so that when my mother was raised, she was raised a Baptist. And her mother, of course, was saved. That's a bit about sort of their background. But when we were growing up in the house, I want to tell you 2 or 3 things. First of all, in our home, there was absolutely no alcohol. My father was a world-class accordionist. Now you may think, well, Leslie, you say that he probably could play the accordion. No, I'm talking about a genius. I'm talking about people who gathered round by the hundreds just to see him play The Flight of the Bumblebee with a glove on his right hand. I myself, as a little boy, read the newspaper and read the adverts there where it said, "Come and hear Scotty Hale, the accordion king." One time he was invited to my Uncle Bobby's, just across the street, for a party to play some songs. And he did that, and I was sitting there. And there's quite a few people in the rooms there in that house. And suddenly a man came by, one of the people there. He had some kind of black stuff of arm, pouring out different glasses. And he sat one by, and he said, "Scotty," everybody called him Scotty because he was born in Scotland. "Scotty, there's your drink." Boy, did I ever watch that drink. My father played some more songs. The man said, "Don't forget about your drink, Scotty." Father played some more. And it was all over. His drink was sitting there. I watched it so much. And finally he put his accordion into its case, lifted it and walked out the door, and it was still there. And that was one of the lessons he taught me. Don't touch this stuff. Not even so-called to pass yourself. Wine is a mocker. Strong drink is raging. And whosoever is deceived thereby is not wise. how terrible it would be for you. Maybe you could handle a little to go ahead and partake and lead somebody astray who couldn't handle it. Multitudes every year are killed all over the world because of drunken drivers. Friends, this is a stupid drug for a Christian to deal with. And I was raised in a family where in our home I never saw the stuff. And I'm thankful for that wonderful lesson. You absolutely never touch alcohol. And I'm pleased to tell you, to this day, I've never tasted even this much. And then there was a second rule. No debt. My daddy wouldn't go into debt. If he wanted something or they needed something for the house, they saved up for it first. Now there may be an area, if you're buying a home and you need a mortgage, I don't want to put you into condemnation. That may be all right as long as you can pay the monthly payments. But don't ever get yourself, if possible, into the place where you're so stretched financially. I'm pleased to tell you in our own home, we're completely debt-free, both in the home and in the ministry. And I give God the glory for that and tell you it was my daddy and my mother who taught me that. Then number 3, no fighting, no arguing. I was in that house with my mother and father and my 2 wonderful sisters, Doreen and Ella. Doreen still survives. I never heard them even raise their voices to each other in all that time. I used to joke with people and say, you know, in all our marriage, Maureen and I, in our home, we've never had one argument. Oh, and they say, oh, is that right? And I say, usually we go out into the backyard to have ours. Of course, that's a joke. But I wasn't raised in the atmosphere of anger and bitterness and back and forward. It was smooth and lovely. Oh, do I ever thank God for these wonderful people. I want to tell you one other thing about my father. Especially at the start, he was an ordinary working man, had to take a job. I remember he worked in a brickyard, and yet he had this ability on the accordion. But I distinctly remember one particular occasion. As a little boy, I was sitting at his feet, playing with a few toys when he was playing in our parlour at home. Then he played this particular one. And I always said to my daddy, Daddy, what's that one called? Because I really liked it. But this particular time, I remember he put his chin on top of the accordion. And he looked down at me, stopped playing, and he said, son, that one is called The Stars and Stripes Forever. And he said this. He said, I want you to hear this. It's all about America. He never knew that one day I would live in America. Oh my. And he himself never got to it, but he said, it's all about America. And let me tell you, son, America is a wonderful country, and don't you ever allow anybody to tell you anything different. Because at that time, so many of the working men voted Labour, and Labour was practically anti-American. What a blessing. On my mother's side, she was more on the spiritual, my father the philosophical. Taught me wonderful lessons. He was a total conservative, believed in capitalism, even though he was a working man. But you know, my mother told me, oh, so many scriptures, but these 2 have fashioned my life. What a heritage, I don't deserve it. She said, son, remember this. It's in the book of Psalms. Except the Lord build the house, they labor in vain that build it. Except the Lord keep the city, the watchman waketh but in vain. Son, she said, don't live for the immediate, live for the ultimate. Yes, you have to pay your bills and do things in the immediate, but don't live there, live for the ultimate. And the other one, and she must have given me 500 favourite scriptures, but the other one that stands out in my head so much, in the book of Colossians chapter 3, set your affections on things above, not on the things of this world. What a change that made. I don't like to say this, but I looked out on the street. I've seen drunk men fighting. Drunk men rolling down the street. Some of those homes I've been in, because I played with the children, they were dumps. We had a little house too. We lived in an ordinary street, but it was beautiful and it was clean. And we always had nice clothes and good food. And as I say again, what an inheritance. One day a rather remarkable thing happened. I was already a grown man, and my daddy was in the house, and we were talking about being in a fight. I can't remember the details, but I was doing this. It was just shadow boxing. And then I lifted my leg as if I was kicking somebody. And even though it was only a jokey shadow boxing thing, my daddy said, "No, son, don't do that." I said, "Don't do what?" He said, "Don't kick." I said, "What do you mean, Daddy?" He said, "Never," I can't tell you. He said, "Never kick a man when he's down. I've spent my life trying to pick people up, not to put them down." Oh, I never heard my daddy or mother, tremendous workers that they were, never heard them say a bad word in their lives. A funny little thing happened. When my father would say a word, I remember from time to time, my mother would contradict him and say, "You're pronouncing it wrong," and he always replied, "But that's the way they say it in Scotland." And then he told me, he would say in the house, just rarely, but he said it, that there's a little saying in Scotland, that if your group here and you have a different opinion than those out there, then what you say is, "Was like us," or "Who's like us," and "Damn the rest of us." In other words, we don't care. We're staying to this opinion. And when my daddy would say the word "damn," oh, my mother would go. And you know what I said as a boy? "Say it again, Daddy. Please, say it again." It was such fun to hear it. I thank God too for two wonderful sisters, Doring and Ella. But I got to tell you something that really hurts, and yet it's beautiful. It's my daddy when he was about to pass away. Did I ever admire this man? Full of integrity and honesty. If he thought he did a deal with a man and the man was shortchanged 1 penny, he'd walk 5 miles to pay that penny back. But he's in hospital this day. Royal Victoria Hospital, Belfast. I go up to visit him. It's a big open ward. There's 30 beds in it, 15 down this wall and 15 down this wall. He's in the first bed. I go up to him and have a nice little visit, tell him I love him, and then I turn to leave. I stayed with him for a good while. I turned to leave. And when I was walking out the ward, I heard him saying, son, come here, son, come back. And I said, "Oh, sorry, Daddy." So I rushed back. And I spoke to, "Oh, no," he said, it doesn't matter. "Daddy," I said, please tell me. It doesn't matter what you want, I'll get it for you, or I'll do my best. Oh, I said, "Don't bother." I said, "Daddy, what do you mean?" I said, "It's okay." I said, "No, Daddy, it doesn't." "Okay," he said. Meaning for me to lean down closer. And I leaned down with my ear close to his mouth. And then he said these words. I honestly have difficulty getting them out. He said, "Son, I just wanted to tell you this." He said, "If anything happens, I'll see you on the other side of Jordan. If anything happens, I'll see you on the other side of Jordan." When they brought him home for a bit, he then eventually did pass away in my arms. I'll tell you how it happened. I got up in the bed, put his head in my armpit like this, and I said, he was unconscious. I said, "Daddy, I love you, and Jesus is your Savior, your Redeemer." I remember saying that, "and your friend." And here's what he did. And he was gone. But one final thing. Before he was gone, when he was unconscious, he was like that for a while. And my sisters took turn, kind of looking after him, just sitting in a chair. And my sister Doreen was there, and I'm just about through. My sister Doreen was there this particular day, totally unconscious, and suddenly he rises up in the bed fully, with such strength, and put out his two hands like this and looked up and said, "Home." He was ready to go home. And then I came in, and then he passed away in my arm. I've got to honour them, their 94th wedding anniversary. Two magnificent parents, full of industry and honour and integrity, and love God. And I love you. If you're a parent, try to be a parent like that. And if you're not yet a parent, thank God for this example that my parents left. Love you. See you next time. God bless. Bye-bye.